Hey, what's up, Taurus? Welcome back to this general tarot reading for you. All typical disclaimers are assumed. All non-typical disclaimers are asserted. I'm not responsible for you misusing the truth imparted by this message if it is not meant for you. You need to make sure that you take what resonates for you and leave the rest. Pretty typical stuff for us tarot watchers, I suppose. That being said, make sure you check the timestamps below. There will be a conclusion section at the end, which goes anywhere from about 8 minutes to like 13 minutes, depending on what I ramble on about in there. But that is the complete set of cards out, and it gets to the gist of the message. So if you don't wish to sit through me stalling for cards to drop, feel free to check out the timestamps and explore to your heart's content. Also, while you're down there in the inscriptions, make sure to take a look at my support links. Any way you can support me directly through PayPal or indirectly through social media following would help me out immensely. With that being said, I suppose I can get started here. So, your energy, Taurus. This can signify an older male, but I'm a little mixed on reading people into the suit cards. I really prefer reading the energy out of it. So let's assume that I'm not going to assume any age or gender. Instead, I'm going to go with the quality of masculine energy. Excuse me. Yes, the quality of masculine energy from the king. And in this instance, it's the Pentacles, so it's a... I hate to say feminized masculine, it's very masculinizing. This King of Pentacles is in a feminine energy, earth energy, your energy. So even though it has masculine energy, it has the overall connotation of the feminine earth energy as well. So it's a little bit of a blend here. It's a blend of these qualities, but the problem is it's in the reverse. So in the reverse, you've got an individual who they can be a little too absorbed in their material possessions, and they can come off as very uninteresting because they're so absorbed in their material stuff. They're not on resonance with, like, they're not always super occupied with how the quality of their feelings. They're like very easily entertained by, they can be very easily entertained by their material possessions that they cherish, is a part of this. Which the idea is that can make them kind of dull because they aren't pushing for better energy. So it's a little bit of a sign of complacency. In a more dark context, it can mean like a greedy individual, sort of. They're very greedy for what they're looking for. It's one of the more mellow energies for a reversed king. But energetically, they are usually, this toxicity is due to the fact that they're missing their heart to some degree, and that's what we've got with the Lovers in reverse as well. Is this individual is they're kind of, I don't really have a good word for it. So that's interesting on the split. Another king and another 6. That's interesting. There is... I'm going to try and clarify the Lovers. Let's see. Can I clarify the Lovers, please? One card, please, for the Lovers. That probably could have been a double clarifier. Okay. If you would, please. One clarifier for the Lovers. No? Clarifier for the King of Pentacles. Okay. So that's the King of Pentacles who's now finding themselves at a they find themselves in a prolonged state of maybe inability to make money. Let's see, clarifying the Lovers in reverse, please. What about expanding? How about expanding beyond the night, the King of Pentacles? So this wanted to come out for that. King of Cups in reverse. And that was lingering out a little bit earlier as well. So now we're seeing a double whammy of a masculine energy that is turned around on their emotionality big time. And the Lovers can signify that disconnection of the heart. And there's also the idea here that we've got two men, perhaps, who are in a relationship. Once again, it's not like I want to read in... That's one reason why I'm kind of getting miffed on reading people into it, is because it's just not as... It's harder to speculate about. From my side, I can't actually do anything, or I don't have any way to figure out if this is people or the energy is what's supposed to be coming through here. So there's part of me that's trying to turn away from sticking to the anthropomorphic archetype and is instead really wants to focus. I really want to focus more on the energy. So I will say though that there is the Lovers card here with two fellows here. So it could be two older guys who are in a relationship in a more literal sense. If I'm going to read it about the energy though, we're looking at, and actually, okay, so let me try and clarify the Lovers in reverse as well. The energy is about a dissociation between the heart and the mind, which is part of what the King of Pentacles is going through in this. It's essentially what both of these kings would be going through. Both of these reversed energies would have that dissociation. That's where their toxicity is bred, because they don't have their mentalism isn't being led by proper emotionality, and that's essentially what is the source of this toxicity in them and this insecurity in them, is they've lost this connection. So I'm looking for, okay, so as soon as I asked for that, we do have this coming out. So Lovers in reverse and clarifying, Sun reversed, which is how one would feel this energy being lacking, because they are... The other reality is what their mind is preoccupied with. Their mind is not preoccupied with proper light. They're missing a greater potential of what to fill their mind with, what to utilize their mentalism for. What they're bothering to mentalize isn't always the brightest thing. It isn't always the most positive thing, the most optimistic thing. It's very often, they're like, it's lazy thinking. They could be thinking about, their mentalism could be all about bettering their situation or doing something that is better. But when the Sun is in reverse, it's like they're focused on, their energy is being wasted on thinking about the bad stuff that is. Or it's busy thinking about a less optimal route to take. Even though they kind of know that there's a better route, they're still wasting their time thinking about the worst option. Or it's like lazy thinking. It's very lazy quality of, it denotes a low quality of mental result, of imaginative result. And the Lovers, that's one of the curses of the Lovers in reverse, is that dissociation affects your imagination, which by what that means is it affects your mental judgment. It affects the accuracy of your mentalisms, and it affects how often your mentalisms are true. And if you're used to that, you can be in this toxic. It's easy to be in this toxic energy. Like, that's not everybody's in the toxic energy because they're toxic at heart. It's a lot of times it's that they're dissociated like this. And even though they would do better, evil is ever nigh unto them, as the good old book said at some point in the New Testament, I think. I'm pretty sure, but I'm not 100%. But that's sort of what's going on here. So let's see. Can I get clarity for the King of Cups reverse, please? Okay. So clarity for King of Cups reverse. The Hanged Man in reverse. So you've drawn all 6 negative here. Once again, another sign of failing to retrospect, which is part of what is yielded by this energy. When this Lover's energy is disconnected, and when you are stuck in when you don't have the light of the sun at your back, so to speak, when your mentalism isn't of its purest possible quality, it's like there's like lazy mentalism. That can lead to shoddy mentalism, faulty mentalism, false mentalism. The facts you're relying on are false. Just because your mentalism comes up with them doesn't mean they're true fact. And the Hangman is reinforcing that even further. It's another sign of the internal world, the mental results of the interior world being faulty. It's another sign of that. And now we've got this 5 of Pentacles in the prologue. This is a sign that you are unable. The very direct notion is that you're unable to have a job because it's so severe. And in a lighter sense, it's just simply a sign that you're struggling financially. But that's such a strange thing to be told, that you're struggling financially because you are lacking in quality. It's not exactly how I want to tailor my readings, if I do be honest. However, usually readings like this go to the fact that you're suffering under some kind of tribulation that you don't understand the source of. And when you don't understand the source of that tribulation, you have to disrupt this heart connection. Because society around you is demanding certain action from you, but the only way to do that action, oftentimes, is to dissociate from your heart. And you might get into the habit mentally of doing those actions, but they also are not on board with spirit. And that means that spirit, you have to turn away from listening to your heart to accomplish these cultural and societal demands upon you. And that's exactly why you're getting this dissociated Lovers, this dissociated Sun, and this dissociated Hangman. It's ruining your internal world. That's what all these cards are suggesting. And you even have the 2 feminine kings, which would signify that it's emotionally and heart-based. So your emotional base and your heart base is quite ravaged at this point. And it's the typical reason for that is that you are sensitive to the fact that something doesn't feel right to you about societal expectations. And it's also a good sign that you haven't given up on your heart yet. So even though it's very tormentous and very toiling, you haven't given up on the fact that your heart matters, which is the only reason you would be here if this is you listening to this, because of some of the implications here. But I'm curious to see what else can we get. Can we please get past the King of Cups? If we could, please. Can we get the King of Cups developed? Can we please develop the King of Cups? Okay, so what about developing the Lovers? Centering this King of Pentacles. Can we develop the Lovers? Okay, I'll take another shot at the King of Cups then. Can we develop this King of Cups, please? Any clarity for this King of Cups? Alright, another shot at the Lovers. It's barely out on the bottom. Alright, so I'm not getting anything else for this. Nothing clear, really. It seems pretty straightforward to me, actually. And that's actually sort of how Taurus reads go a lot. They are like, they kind of take they take the negative part on the chin, and then they don't need much else to kind of get them flipped around. So, like, if you're, as a Taurus, you actually, this might be very clear. And as soon as I said that, I got a card, like a success card. So I think I'm going to actually call this reading here. I think this is good timing. So, to make a quick conclusion here, I'm not even sure if I want to conclude. I kind of articulated it so well during this that I don't really feel like re-articulating it. It's pretty straightforward here. As a Taurus Earth sign, you very well could be represented by this King of Pentacles. It's disappointing though. It's disappointing though because you're in reverse energy. It's kind of a blasé energy, kind of a boring, dull energy, especially for other people. I'm not seeing a lot of it as greed here. I'm seeing it more just as you're kind of lacking emotional resonance. And it's very, very clarified by all of these surrounding cards. The only card that doesn't really clarify that is this one, Five of Pentacles reverse. That's just a sign of your finances not going very well. That you are on maybe prolonged unemployment, prolonged disability, something like that. Something, your finances aren't working out very well. And part of why that's the case is you're really just not feeling it. And all of these cards signify that you are not feeling it, except for this one. But the reason you aren't feeling it is because you've dissociated your internal resonance, your internal, what's the word I'm even looking for? Your internal integrity, but that's kind of lame sounding, so like, I don't actually exactly have a word for it. But the Lovers in reverse signifies that your heart and your head aren't working together properly. And when that's the case, one or the other can very toxically rule the other one. And we're seeing you in this insecure, toxic King of Pentacles and King of Cups energy. Both of which are the result of being in this reverse lover state. This reversed internal resonance between your spiritual heart and your mentalism. One is meant to guide the other. And when the Lovers is in the reverse, it's very often signifies that guidance is not in place properly. And that can lead you to like very toxic mentalism, but it can also lead you to very toxic emotionalism. Usually what's happening though is your mentalism is misguided and you are relying on faulty judgment for your decisions. But when that happens, you naturally are going to fail at things. And it's tricky because society kind of demands us to do certain things. But society doesn't realize how that doing those things actually ruins this connection. Because the things it demands are, of course, the wrong things. But because of cultural stigmatisms and stuff and dogmas, we get into mental patterns of just going with the flow sort of thing. Like there's sometimes in history there's not even been a choice for individuals, but it creates a mental momentum. The problem is if you are taking that action and it is not inspired by your heart, then it creates this disresonance because you are performing an action that your heart knows is wrong, but because society demands it of you, you have to do it anyway. And it eventually makes you numb to listening to your heart. And there's kind of like two tracks here. There's like three tracks actually. One, there's this track where you somehow like play the societal game so well that you get into a position of authority and wealth. And in that situation, it's a little easier to find your resonance because you don't have to run the rat race. And those people tend to reestablish the norms because they serve them. The norms serve their ability to have that in their life. It reinforces their security. So they need people going through the societal habits in order to facilitate their lifestyles. And that can actually very strangely create a resonance in them that actually seals this up because they don't have the same stresses. Like normal people. So obviously they don't have the same, it's not as easy for them to break this, because they have like money and wealth and stuff. It doesn't always work out that way, but often enough they aren't suffering from this problem. On the other side of the spectrum, there's everybody who just goes with the flow of society. Those people can get to like some success doing that, but the problem is they have to dissociate from their spirit. And that is very destructive in a certain sense, but more specifically, it denies your greatest attainment of fulfillment of life. And those individuals also find a certain resonance in that. Eventually, once they really just get on board with not giving a shit anymore, it kind of re-resonates them. Sort of similar to the wealthy people who like can find the resonance because they're in like a certain acceptance mode. So a lot of these working people get it the other way, where they just like accept the tribulation and the toil, sort of. The third option is people like you and me who lose this resonance but don't give up on it. And that's where you can get stuck feeling like this, because you're feeling it because you haven't given up on those feelings, but you've normalized certain unsuccessful behavior. And because you keep reenacting that same behavior, you keep running into the same negative heart energy. Because the mentalisms you're putting forth are, I hate to use the word negative because it's so cliche. So to be more specific, the utter reality of the quality of your mentalism isn't being sharpened properly by your emotions. And since you're here in this energy, it's very likely that you don't quite understand how all of that works. And I can sympathize with that, because I've been going through it over the last few years, where like this disresonance is so strong that I couldn't do anything about it, so to speak, because I was so new with dealing with it, that like it didn't feel like there was any other way to be. And when you're stuck feeling like that, you are so trapped in this you can be very, very dull. You can be trapped in very dull energy, because you won't go one way and you won't go the other. And that can, just the whole scenario can be a real buzzkill, a severe buzzkill. Because I know, like, when I tried to go and like go to normal work, so to speak, my spirit is not on board with it. If I'm not doing the right thing to make money, my spirit like rips me a new one. Even when I've tried to just accept it, kind of, it doesn't let me. So I can sympathize with being stuck in this kind of energy. Getting over it is very difficult, because you have to be very willing to change your behavior depending on how you're feeling. And you have to be very willing to change the quality of your mentalism when it is not emboldening your spirit. And if you're in this energy, there's a good shot that you have a huge backlog of negative mental momentum that is built up over living like this. So the first step is you have to catch yourself thinking bad about yourself. And when you catch yourself thinking bad about yourself, you have got to remember what is good about you. And you have got to replace those bad thoughts of yourself with the good thoughts of yourself. And that can be the hardest when there's like people breathing down your neck, telling you about your bad. That's when it's very difficult to shift out of it, because they're sitting there putting it on you. But that is the mechanics of how you deal with this, is you have to, and it can't be fake good things about you either. There have to be good things to put in there, or your spirit won't resonate properly. So the thing I like to keep in mind is that, you know, I've decided to not betray my spirit. And because I have decided to not betray my spirit, that is why I have developed into this individual. And I use why I do that, and I use why I'm fighting for that as what is good about me. And when any toxification tries to strike now, I've developed a much better habit of shifting out of that. And it is not nearly as hard as it used to be to, once you've really got it in gear, it's practically effortless. And you're just gonna believe and you're good. It doesn't matter the bad anybody else sees in you or of you. You can turn away from those negative thinking, from that negative thinking, and you can embrace your own optimistic quality, the things that are good about you. And materially, that can be very difficult if you're in this much destitution. So maybe in this instance you don't have anything material, because I don't have anything material either. It's all soul power in this one for me to fight this negativity. So you could, if you're in that situation as well, then even in that situation, it's even harder than it has to be. But the first way up here is by lifting yourself up and not letting these negative mentalisms tear away at your energy, because that's essentially what ends up happening. And it deters your ability to achieve things. And it can build a ton of negative mental momentum, which is a lot of what I'm seeing here. Negative, and it's turning into negative mental and emotional momentum, unfortunately for you. But I can, from first-hand accounts of dealing with this myself, I can express to you that it is possible to overcome it. Even if you feel like the thoughts are on automatic, you can still shift it. You can still shift it into automatic optimism if you really take the diligence to replace. It's not that once you think a thought, it's thought, and there's nothing you can do about it. But the power you have in this instance is, instead of thinking one negative thought, then letting that go to a second negative thought, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, on and on. At that first negative thought, as soon as the thought is done, the next thought has got to be, it's got to be you've got to replace that initial negative thought. Like, you have to counteract it with your next thought. So once you have consciously become wary of the fact that you have had that self-depreciating thought, your immediate next thought needs to be, no, actually, I'm good. And it's much better if there's something real, of course, that you can plug into there, like, no, I don't need to think that negativity about me because I'm spiritually, I haven't sacrificed my spirit. And then maybe after that another negative thought comes, but once again, like you've identified, it's not like it's your will to bring that negative thought in. But then you have to do it again. You have to say, actually, no. The truth is that I'm good. And it might take time for you to deal with this, but with time you can get it to the point where the negative thoughts don't come the same. And you're more automatically spitting out the good in you to yourself, inside of yourself. And once you're doing that, you start to see the good in your opportunities. And you can turn this sun card around and you start seeing the good in the world around you. And you can turn this hanged man around and you can start to rely on your own ability to introspect. And once that's really rolling and you've really found yourself, essentially this Lover's card gets rectified also, and your spirit is starting to be on board with your thoughts, as long as they're accurate. If you just like blind optimism, that can also fail. That's the trick, because you're trying to identify, like you're trying to get real fact from your mentalism. The problem is that your mind can hold all facts, even false facts. But the idea is that your heart is supposed to delineate if the fact is true or false. So when you're thinking a thought and your heart is like severely on board with it, not like a mania, but that your spiritual heart is resonating with it and it feels whole, that is where the mentalism is serving you. That is where that's a truth. That's a better truth for you. If your heart's not on board, then that mentalism is not of quality. And even if it's optimistic, it can still fail. Which means there's a little bit of fake it till you make it in there to a certain extent, but it's not as reliable as actually finding your soul properly. But I know for me, like, one of the only times I really ever find it is when I'm doing these tarot readings for other people. It's hard to express it otherwise a lot of the times. And part of that's because I don't have any money. And because I don't have any material success, the world can chew me up real good. It makes it very easy for me to be in this broken state of dissociated heart and mentalism. And it can make it very easy, and has made it very easy for a while now, to be self-destructive within myself, and to not focus on good in me, and literally believe for years that I was no good. But then, like, there's always this other part of me that never gave into that completely. I knew I was better than that, but like it looked like it enough that it was even hard for me to shake it off. But I've developed into the state now where I can shake it off for almost anything. And if I had money, I would be able to shake it off for anything. I'd be able to find my resonance, so. Yeah, let me check the timer here. 34 minutes. I've been rambling on here big time, but once again, this is another reading where like I can sympathize with the energy that's going on here. So I can sympathize with you about being this destitute. And I am trying to heal this problem. Because I understand how tormentous it can be to be trapped in this. And I can understand like the severe lack of sympathy for being like this. And I can sympathize with being in this state of being. I can point you pretty close to the right direction, but I am still not there myself 110%. Within my personal self. That for my readings, I feel like I can connect this better. I feel better about doing it, but that's also partly because Spirit seems to be on board with me doing these tarot readings. So like Spirit's at my back a little bit differently for these than what I'm used to. Compared to all the other things I've tried to make money with, like to find a living with. My Spirit has like never been on board for any of them except for what I'm doing right now, which is doing these tarot readings. So I feel like I'm on the cusp of overcoming this, but even just 3-4 years ago, I was like nowhere near it. So you can, if you're young enough, you can be years and years off from having any inkling of how to deal with this, depending on the circumstances. So if I can help you at least sympathize that somebody can go through this, but they don't have to be going through it, then I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad that I can help you out with that. So, I don't really have anything else to add here. It's pretty straightforward, actually. It's probably not straightforward for everybody else you're dealing with, but for me, it's pretty straightforward, and I can sympathize. So, if you can overcome this, I would appreciate it, because that means I was able to help with this. And that means that my own suffering was able to, in my own toil and my own what's the word I'm looking for? The spiritual work I've been doing to deal with this has paid off for someone. And that's what it has been for. It has been for rectifying this in our hearts. So I'm, if that can actually happen for you, that would be great. And it would be, it would be half validating, honestly, that I'm on the right track with what I'm doing here. So, all right, Taurus, I'm gonna go now. I think you get the message, and I think you understand what I'm trying to say. So, thank you very much for being here, and take care. Good luck.